Hey everybody, I just wanted to take some time to do a video this time for feedback. I've been giving you a lot of individual feedback, and then I've also been giving some feedback that's more general and combined with individual feedback as you close in on the final part of this semester. We're cruising along pretty good. We basically have a little over a week left in the class, and so there's still a lot of work to do, but we're on the downward slide, I think, towards the end. So if you have any problems with anything, please let me know. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to talk to people over the phone to clarify things or to help you out. So just contact me and I'll help out. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about a few things that a number of you mentioned in the formative assessment from about a week ago, where you got to critique the class. And I just want to thank you for all of the hard work on that and all of the good insight onto improving the class. I think it came up with a couple of ideas that a number of people mentioned that I can work on and try to make the class even a little bit better than I think it already is. A lot of people focused on a couple of things in particular that were really positive. For example, a lot of people mentioned that they liked the invisible hands narratives. So that idea of the personal narrative is really powerful for people, that idea of story. It's a lot different reading than the cycle of socialization and some of the theoretical ethical stuff that we talked about earlier, which takes on a much different kind of purpose. We use story in order to connect with people on an emotional level, to develop empathy, to understand their situations. And I think Invisible Hands does a really good job of that, while also providing a lot of factual material to help support what they're trying to say and trying to show. But then there's also the theoretical stuff like the cycle of socialization, which doesn't necessarily have a whole bunch of citations for where they get their information. And I think it's important to recognize that the purpose of like the cycle of socialization or the identity pieces, they're based on an immense body of research that came prior to them, and then these are just some ideas that are distilled down and then used as tools to analyze future concepts and future things that are coming up. Like you can use the cycle of socialization to analyze anyone's life, and everybody's socialization is going to be just a little bit different. That's the cool thing about theory and theoretical stuff, is that it allows you to understand things through a framework that you might not have understood them before. And like I said, it's a theory. It's something that isn't necessarily fact, but it can help you illuminate facts or use facts in a way to come to some pretty solid conclusions. Something else that I want to indicate to or point out too is that a lot of people are helping teach each other. There's a lot of good work going on the discussion boards, particularly with using direct quotes and paraphrasing other people's thoughts on the discussion board, essentially repeating them back to them and then saying, here's what I think you're thinking, here's a quote that I think supports that. I think you've done a really nice job as a whole class in terms of supporting each other in that way and contributing to the learning, essentially becoming co-teachers of the class, so that I'm necessary as a teacher, but you are just as necessary as a co-teacher of the class for some of your classmates. So really appreciate that. Something else to think about too is the idea of the whole overall class structure. I think probably now, a week later, people have a little bit better understanding of what's going on, but I just wanted to talk about a couple quick things. The class is based on the idea of displacement, but it looks at it in a number of different ways. It looks at it in a personal displacement, how sometimes we feel like we don't belong, so it's helpful to look at our code of ethics and helpful to look at our socialization and our identity in order to see how we fit with ourselves, right? That micro level. Then there's also the community level, the level where we're looking at how we interact and how the community tells us what we are. And that's a lot of the diversity stuff. And diversity can be considered a way of kind of social displacement, right? Particularly marginalization. That idea that if you're part of a particular social group, you might not fit in, you might be marginalized, therefore displaced. Even if you're not physically displaced, like maybe a refugee or a person who's become homeless, but you're certainly displaced at a mental or social or psychological level. So that's where displacement fits in there. And then we're also talking about the idea of economic displacement, how people's lack of access to jobs or lack of access to safe jobs leads to them moving around or not being able to become a productive part of society, essentially being exploited, one of those 5 faces of oppression. And then we'll move eventually to the final bit of the class, which is how do we solve some of these problems, right? We're talking about identifying problems this whole class up until the last couple of modules where I'll be asking you to do a global solutions paper where you'll look at what other people are doing to try to solve these problems and then try to come up with possibly some solutions yourself. You don't have to come up with a solution for the global solutions, but you need to identify what other people are trying to do and then kind of evaluate whether or not you think those are working or have worked or will work. And you can choose whatever you want to focus on in terms of the global problem, as long as you're looking for something that connects the micro identity level to the community level to a structural or global level that goes beyond just the community. So keep that in mind as well. You're going to be spending a little bit time doing less reading and more doing during this final week of class. I have fewer writing assignments, fewer reading assignments, except for the big ones, right? The civic engagement, which is due in a couple days, and then also the global solutions, which will have a draft due and get some feedback and then revise that. And that'll be the last thing that you turn in. But it's most of the time I'm having you dedicate toward those things. So it'll seem like the class slows down a little bit because I'm expecting you to be working on your own larger projects as opposed to doing smaller stuff like discussion boards that I have assigned. So I tried to scale that back a little bit at the request of some people to make more room for the bigger papers. So keep that in mind. Also, as we progress forward too, my overall feedback will start to trim down a bit. Most people in the class are getting it now. Most people understand my expectations. Most people are doing a really great job. And then I understand that sometimes you don't have time and you can't finish a couple of posts or something like that. You lose a few points, but don't worry. You could do some extra credit, or also there's a lot of points that you can miss and still get an A in this class, right? You need to get 930 points to get an A, 900 to get an A minus. So there's still really good grades available, even if you're missing some points here and there. So choose strategically which stuff to do and how to best spend your time to get the most points and to learn the most in order to fulfill the requirements of the class. So that's all I have to say about that right now. And then I'd like to also take a little bit of time to discuss the 5 faces of oppression and the 5 faces of oppression grids that you did. A lot of really outstanding work on that. You did a really good job of picking out, almost everybody did a really good job of picking out quotes and then backing them up with some reasoning behind them. That's one of the big points of the class, is to synthesize your ideas and your analysis with specific evidence from the text, and a lot of people are doing that really well. I was very impressed with the overall quality of work on the 5 faces of oppression assignment, so nice job there. Also, you can start trying to weave in some of the older readings into current assignments. If I see you refer to socialization, or refer to identity, or refer to privilege and disadvantage, or refer to ethical concepts, that's going to be like ding, 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 right? I mean, you're hitting the jackpot there if you want to do a gambling metaphor. It makes my head ding, I guess you could say, to where it's like, okay, this person's really trying to purposely and intentionally work all these ideas together, and that's what I want to see. So also something else to consider is that you can apply the idea of the 5 faces of oppression to your global solutions paper that's coming up, and also to your civic engagement essay. If I see evidence of 5 faces of oppression, of the socialization article in these bigger essays, that's going to show me that you're also weaving together the major concepts of the course. So that's all I got. Hopefully you made it all the way through this, and I will have maybe one or two more videos like this as we approach the end of the semester to make it a little more personal than just reading stuff. So thanks for your participation, and I'll see you again online.